Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with the main man, Charlie, aka Academy AVFC, for your latest episode of Lions Den Latest. Make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, help us on the road to 5k. We've got loads to cover in tonight's show. There's been so much going on with the Academy of late. We've had the UFA Youth League, we've had EFL Trophy, we've had EFL Cup, we've had under-18s, under-21s, and our loan watch of all our players out on loan as well. So, Charlie, great to have you back, mate. How are you doing?
I am doing well, keeping up with everything. Well, I kind of love this period of the season where it feels like there's a game every 3 or 4 days, and so... with the Youth League, as you mentioned there, we've been having concurrent matches on a Saturday, so I'm having to tweet 2 games at the same time. So it's enjoyable. It makes the time pass quickly.
Yes, you've been a very busy man, tweeting all over the place, travelling up and down the country, keeping us abreast of everything that's going on. So I guess let's start with that UEFA Youth League, because it's been a new territory that we talked about in the last episode for Aston Villa, and they've played against young boys, they've played against Bayern Munich. What an experience for these young players, and how have they coped with it so far?
Yeah, I think that the main thing to take is that they've been highly competitive in both games. I think both matches have gone pretty similarly. Where it's kind of actually been more of a case of physicality that's prevented Villa from really dominating and really creating the chances that they should make through the sort of territory that they've had. And so it will be a learning curve, so certainly for the players that are involved. I think the players that we're seeing involved are perhaps not the most physically dominant as well. If we're thinking about someone like Brad Burrows, who's quite a slight winger at the moment, Trayvon Mully, who's quite slight, and if you're coming up against big dominant centre-backs who have a different football upbringing, it's a different test to what they'll be coming across possibly in the under-18s.
Yeah, and the results have been quite tight. I think they lose the first game 1-0 or 2-1, was it?
So, the opening game was against Young Boys. They lost 2-1. That was quite a tight match. A game of little chances, really. And Young Boys' clinicality won them their game. But really, to be honest, I wasn't hugely impressed with Young Boys. It was more 2 probably preventable goals from Villa. And obviously that's part of the learning experience, isn't it? Is learning sort of the moments in which you need to remain switched on and not lose focus. And then the Bayern game was a similar story, really. It was clinicality. Bayern created one big chance in the second half and took it. And Villa sort of huffed and puffed, but didn't really create anything clear cut. Travis Patterson had a brilliant game, and he's been a real live wire in both of those games. Nothing surprising about that. He's been stereotypical of what we've come to expect. I think an interesting dynamic that I hadn't really given fair consideration to prior to the tournament is why English teams don't historically do very well in this tournament. And I think my opinion of that is that we don't have an under-19 age group in domestic football or in age group football. We have under-21s and under-18s. And so what happens in this tournament is that you bring together 2 squads who perhaps don't play very often. There isn't as much familiarity. They're perhaps not training so much together. And it's a real amalgamation of the two top age groups. And so I think that has a key role to play when you consider that Bayern's under 19s playing an under 19 league, and so I think they're a bit more drilled, a bit more familiar with each other. They have that understanding with the players that they're playing with, and that comes across particularly in that Bayern game. It looked like a team that has that real resolute attitude. And can sort of batten down the hatches when they're 1-0 up and say, right, we're not going to concede today.
Yeah, but like you say, it's a great experience for them, and they're going to come up against, Bologna, Bruges, Juventus, all before Christmas. So it's going to be, and Leipzig as well. So it's going to be a great experience for these youngsters, and it really does give exposure to the full academy, as we're going to find out in a second, because I'll skip to last night now. We're recording on Thursday night, because I think we've got to, really. I mean, the EFL Trophy, they had a very good result against Fleetwood, where a couple of the kind of first teamers coming back to fitness were playing, the likes of Emi Buendia. So that was a good experience for them. I think we talked about that on the last episode. But last night was, I think you tweeted out something like 5 16-year-olds in the squad, under 17s in there, under 18s in there. Maybe only 2 or 3 that a lot of Villa fans maybe know, and one of those was the goalkeeper, who had a phenomenal game. And yeah, they got a draw, and they won on penalties. I mean, what a night against Bolton for them.
Yeah, it was incredible. And the thing that actually I took from last night is these are the players that we're going to see in the UEFA Youth League. To a couple of those names that I mentioned there at the start, your Brad Burrows and your Trayvon Mully, who provided a lot. Well, I say a lot of the attacking threat. There was pretty much no attacking threat, but they're the ones who when we managed to get the ball into Bolton's half, actually looked quite lively and looked like they were capable of creating something against quite an experienced backline. And yeah, like you said, 5 16-year-olds are in the starting 11. And yeah, I think the sort of clearest way to put this is that really isn't what this competition is designed for. This isn't a competition for under 18 players to be coming up against professional sides. This competition for the most senior academy groups to be coming up and testing themselves against sides where they may feel capable of competing.
Yes.
And so for me, this was more comparable to the FA Cup match against Liverpool, where we had to field our sort of I'm trying to think of a fair way to put this. Our not our top under 21s, let's say, and our under 18s, and it was resemblant of that last night. And yeah, the thing that struck me from that performance was the maturity of it, the acceptance that okay, we might not have the outball, we might not have the threat going forward, but once we've got our goal, we're happy to sit in and defend and be smart, manage the game. Olivier Ziyech was incredible last night, not just in the goalkeeping, in the 9 saves that he made throughout the match, but in his leadership as well, and that's a quality that will be appreciated. And I'm sure there will be teams watching that thinking, right, this is a player that we want to bring in on loan in January.
Yeah. I mean, it was like you said. I think it's one of those where it is for the, I guess, the more senior of the under 21s and under 19s to test themselves against players that will be around first teams for League One and League Two sides. But because of the situation that Villa maybe find themselves in, operating on numerous fronts, and then today we find that there's a behind closed doors friendly in which Kamara and Mings are playing, so some of those probably players played in that game. They kind of had to be involved yesterday, and amazing experience for them. I think you said something like 1,400 appearances or something, first team appearances in the Bolton side, and yeah, maybe they didn't put everything into the game, Bolton, but even so, it's still great experience for the lads. And they get a decent result in the next game. I think it's against Barrow, and they're through to the next round of the competition. So it's extra game time at senior level football.
Yeah, that final game against Barrow, we can lose and still go through. The only scenario in which we would not be able to make it through is if Fleetwood beat Bolton in a bonus point penalty shootout. So both teams get a point and Fleetwood get 2. So yeah, it looks like we should be going through as things stand. And yeah, even on top of the footballing aspect of the experience of last night, it's also the feeling of playing in front of crowds. A lot of those players will never have played in front of a crowd as big as what they will have played at last night. The celebrations in front of our travelling fans, there was 140 there last night. The Bolton stadium announcer read out, and so those little things that if it lights a spark within their brain to sort of increase that motivation and give that extra little 1% that will help them on their footballing journey, it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. We also had the opportunity to see more of the younger players playing in the EFL Cup or the Carabao Cup against Wickham. Caden Young featuring quite heavily in that game, setting up the goal for Emi Buendia, and a lot of people impressed by Ben Broggio again, coming on and doing very well. So how did you feel about the number of the youth players, the academy players featuring in that game and not really doing themselves any harm, and numerous players now on the bench in the first team squad at the minute?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think the important thing is not to maybe overstate what they've achieved. I think a lot of this is based on the kind of the importance that we were giving to that Wickham game. However, to be getting that exposure at this time in their careers is huge. Aidan Borland came on, played half an hour while the game was in contest, and really helped settle things down. Didn't look out of place, was able to control that midfield the way that we wanted him to. Caden Young looked lively whenever he got the ball, as you said, made the goal, and really showed the talents that have got him to where he has done. That real sort of explosiveness in the final third, that understanding of how to get the defender on the back foot, beat your man, and put in a ball into the right area, which albeit took a deflection, but led to the goal. And then Ben Broggio. The thing I've said this a couple of times, I just love watching him play. He's someone who can have the ball. And I think he must have only had a couple of touches in that Wickham game, but even in those touches, you can kind of tell he's got it, and I love that about him. He the sort of fearlessness with which he approached it. The very first time he got the ball, he sort of fronts up his defender and does exactly what he would be doing in academy football, and that tells a story of the philosophy that's being ingrained. That tells a story of the confidence that the coaches are giving the players. And also the mentality of the players to sort of implement that with no fear. When they go on, Jamal Jimo Aloba, another one who signed a long-term contract extension, featured, and just delighted for each of those players to again. The thing that really hits home for me is that sort of creation of memory for them. Like, they've made their debut for some of them, their boyhood club. Ben Broggio, we know, is a Villa fan. Travis Patterson been at the club for a long time, and to have that sort of moment to look back on, if and hopefully things do work out, but if things don't, then it's something to look back on with pride.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a big packed calendar for Villa after the international break, including a Carabao Cup game at home to Crystal Palace. Would you expect to see some of the same names involved in the team, in the squad, in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Match? I think the coaching staff have made their philosophy clear, and I think the early rounds of the cups we will probably see a similar lineup to what we saw against Wickham, and that means that there will probably be opportunities for those sort of fringe academy players. And so, yeah, really excited to see what that game holds. Just quickly as well, I saw on X over the weekend that Mikel Barnes was part of the match day party for the United game at the weekend.
Yeah.
Again, just a spare man, but again, that's another important one to sort of build up that experience and familiarise yourself with a Premier League match day. That's another nice moment, a nice cab in your rank as things move forward.
Absolutely, and I guess I don't know if he's classed as an academy graduate. I guess you would, Charlie. But seeing Jayden Philp put in such a performance against Bayern Munich, I mean, absolutely incredible stuff for him, and to play with such maturity, and I guess as well that inspiration for the other academy boys to say, look, you know, whatever your journey is, you might go off to another club, you might end up coming back, but you know, you could end up on in a Champions League game playing against Bayern Munich.
Yeah, Jayden's story is phenomenal. He didn't come into football through the usual means. He was part of an academy in London that isn't affiliated with a club. I think the story is that Villa watched him play in a trial match for 45 minutes, and after those 45 minutes decided that they would take the punt. And so, yeah, it's just a beautiful story, and it's one of those stories that in football you sort of come across, and it sort of reminds you why we all sort of love the game. And yeah, like you say, even his last couple of years, having gone permanently to Hull and then come back to Villa, it's not a traditional story, and I love that about Jayden. I love that it's not the sort of stereotypical fairy tale coming through for the team that you represent in the academy. And then he got thrown in against Bayern, and what I appreciated about that performance so much is that it showed a different side to his game that I think a lot of the fan base didn't know existed. The discipline and the defensive work rate, and I think people have never had the opportunity to see that from Jayden in the flesh. And so to do it on the biggest stage of all, to do it on the biggest night of his career, the biggest night of most of our lives who were there, yeah, huge for him. And again, these are the types of things that I look at, and I sort of think I'm just glad that it's a moment for him to sort of cherish and hold on to throughout his career.
Yeah, fantastic. Just a quick roundup as well. We've got they've obviously had domestic under 18s and under 21s games as well. How have the players been getting on with their kind of respective domestic league campaigns?
Under 18s have had a fantastic start to the season. After this first block of fixtures, they're currently top of the league, which, albeit early in the season, is no mean feat. They have only lost once, I believe. So the only sort of blot on their book so far was a 6-2 loss to Chelsea, which is their second most recent fixture. But besides that, I think since we last spoke, they've had a 2-0 win against Tottenham, who are always superb at this level. A 3-1 win against Crystal Palace, who are another team that really are really, really strong at under 18 level. And so, yeah, a couple of the pick out names are Mason Kocher, who's sort of beginning to find his feet after his move, scored, I think, 3 goals now to date. A brilliant assist for a last-minute winner against Southampton, which I think we spoke about last time. Yeah. Brad Burrows, who's featured now in a couple of under-21 squads, featured, of course, last night with the assist for Trayvon Mully's goal and scored the winning penalty in the shootout. And then, yeah, I've really been impressed with the couple of opportunities I've had to watch him with Leon Ruth, who joined in the summer from Luton. And I was astonished to find when I was looking up the ages of all the players for that tweet last night about the ages of the squad, that he's still just 16, and it's astonishing to see the sort of poise and the understanding of the game that he holds, and the maturity with which he showed himself in all of the matches that I've had the opportunity to watch him in. And so, yeah, long may that continue. Their next fixture will be in 10 days' time. They play Arsenal, so the difficult fixtures, if they haven't been difficult already, are going to rack up pretty quickly now. They play Arsenal, and then they play Brighton, who are second, a point behind them in the league. So perhaps that will be a good marker of just how strong this team is, and actually what we can expect of them as the FA Youth Cup sort of comes onto the horizon. That is always a fun part as we move into winter. The FA Youth Cup kicks off, and then in PL2, a bit inconsistent, I think is probably the best way to put it. And I view that as a bit of a symptom of the changing squads. Senior players coming in to get minutes sometimes takes precedent, and so we saw Mings and Kamara feature for 45 at the weekend against Newcastle. And that match we went on to lose 3-2 with a couple of late goals for Newcastle. The previous week, a 4-1 loss to Man City. So currently 19th in the Premier League 2 table. Important to remember with that league that the top 16 teams all qualify for the end of season seeded playoff system. So, yeah, not far off at the moment, level on points with 16th place, and I'm sure better results will be to come as that team sort of starts to settle down as those injured players get back to fitness.
Yeah, good. Well, like you say, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You know, like there's a number of players that would feature in that are moving into the first team squads, and then there's injured players coming back that are using it for minutes, and yeah, there's always going to be transitions throughout those squads. But you know, good to see players moving in and getting first team football, because ultimately that's what you want to try and develop players for the first team, or if not for Villa's first team, for a career in football, to maybe generate money to keep improving the academy. Obviously, FFP, PSR, it all matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the best exposure is the highest level of exposure that you have access to. And so if that means teams being fielded perhaps that are slightly younger than you could get away with in a certain competition, then you may lose a couple of games, but it's not necessarily about results at this level of football. While results are nice and nice for the fans to look at and get you social media clicks, it's not the be all and end all at this level, and it's about creating careers for the players that are involved.
Yeah, excellent. A little bit of, I guess, a question that I had, and I think Villa fans will want to know a little bit about, if you could shed any light. I know we've chatted backstage beforehand, but Rory Wilson has been, I guess, conspicuous by absence in the number of squads. Anything to report? Anything that you're hearing on the ground about the situation with him?
Unfortunately not, no. I don't have any information on the situation with Rory at the moment. We did do a quick check pre-recording that he was in the Scotland under-19 squad. He is. And so a bit of an interesting one to follow. I believe with this being the last year of his contract that December will be, January will be crucial, as he'll be into the last 6 months of his contract. So teams from abroad will be able to approach him. And that's what I've seen in the media, is that Villa are eager to sort of get this resolved as quickly as possible before that becomes a possibility. So unfortunately, no news at the moment, but there are a couple of interesting narratives to follow with him being in the Scotland under-19 squad and not being included recently in the under-21s or the UEFA Youth League.
Yes, well, we'll have to watch this space with with Rory Wilson hit there, because, like I say, he's going to maybe want to keep his options open, and the longer it goes on, if Villa want to keep him, they've got to maybe show him the plan of how they see him getting into the challenging for a first team spot, or getting into squads maybe. And obviously, it's all about money at the end of the day as well. So it's sad to see that, but unfortunately, that's how it works these days.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We've mentioned him a couple of times on recordings before.
And I know you've said he's a player who you think, in your opinion, probably needs a bit more development. He's not probably ready for considering that, but he knows where the goal is.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously goals win you games, to give a cliche, but yeah, it's a really interesting one. The way I always think about this one is how do Villa sell this plan to him? How do they demonstrate to him that you have the potential to break through in the next 2-3 years' time? And it's a conversation actually that I think is relevant to any player who will be hoping to make the breakthrough into that first team squad while Villa are competing in the Champions League, while the stakes are so high with league fixtures. I think it's difficult really for any academy player to make the step up into those surroundings. So I would love to be privy to those conversations that Villa have with Rory Wilson and his entourage. But yeah, I think that's one for us to sort of speculate on, and until we get a concrete answer as to what's happening. I think that's all we can do.
Yeah. Another player who we've got a question about, actually, from Stephen Pennell, who came onto the radar. This player came onto the radar today, I think, by a tweet on X from Rising Ballers, and this is a player called Marky Mead, and he's been on your radar for a little bit. But you've said that there's a few clubs interested in him, and he might even be kind of the next player to maybe break into the higher age groups, the under 18s, maybe even the under 21. So what's Marky Mead all about? What's his story?
So yeah, the tweet by Rising Ballers suggests that he's rated as highly by the academy coaches as they use a ... but I think the suggestion is that he's as highly rated as maybe GREALISH was when he was coming through. Yeah, just again, looks like one of those players that people love to watch. Really, sort of poiseful and technical attacker. Supreme ability in 1v1 to drop a shoulder and beat his man. I think, yeah, there almost seems to be a bit of a swagger about the way that he dribbles the ball, and the clips that I see, I really appreciate, and I really see something special in him. And yeah, he's been one that I've kind of followed the path of. I became aware of maybe about a year, 18 months ago, with somebody else that I was speaking to about Villa at the time, and yeah, we've kind of both followed his path today, and yeah, you just get the feeling there's going to be a time when he makes this breakthrough. He's still 15 years old, which is insane that we're even talking about a player and a transfer rumour at that age. But yeah, he really does look like someone who is not too far off making that breakthrough into the under 18 squad. And yeah, would be really interested to see if we get an opportunity to watch him play before the end of the season.
Well, watch this space, and it'll be on this show and through your wonderful coverage that we will be able to find that, Charlie, as well. Before we've got a couple more questions from viewers and listeners, but bit of a lone watch. We always do a bit of a lone watch, and another player kind of who you've really followed and enjoyed seeing develop is Josh Feeney, and he got his first goal for Shrewsbury the other day. He's doing very well. I think he had a bit of an injury hit time to the start of the season, but starting to get more game time now. And how is he getting on, and how's Tommy O'Reilly getting on at Shrewsbury as well?
Yeah, I think the thing that I really appreciate with Josh Feeney's move is he seems to have confidence from the staff there. As soon as he was back from injury, he was straight into the starting lineup, and that strikes me as they're impressed with what a talent they've got on their hands. The goal that he scored was quite a traditional sort of centre back goal, a recycled set piece which he kind of hooks into the bottom corner and it kind of dribbles across the line. But yeah, that was all part of an important point for Shrewsbury. They've had a difficult start to the season. Tommy was featuring quite heavily in the starting lineup for the first part of the season before picking up a hamstring injury, which has led him to sort of sit on the bench for a couple of weeks. Last night they played in the EFL Trophy. Tommy came on as a substitute at half time. They lost 4-0, which obviously again is not a great result, but teams take the EFL Trophy with a varying level of seriousness. And so yeah, I think well, it feels like I say this every time, but it's one to watch probably over the next couple of months, and we should hopefully see a bit more consistency from Josh Feeney. I think that's an important thing. It feels like at the moment, the couple of opportunities that he's gone places and had a little bit of a niggly injury. So yeah, it would be good to see him sort of mature physically and keep up that starting position that he's earned, and he's kind of making his own at the moment. And then yeah, would be brilliant to see Tommy come back in and again show more signs of what we saw earlier in the season. I watched a couple of Shrewsbury games and I was really impressed with Tommy's individual performances. And yeah, it would be good to see more of that as we move forward into the main part of the season.
Brilliant. It's good to see them, yeah, getting game time and contributing. And what about our Stockport star man Louis Barry? He's a little bit of a quieter September. But
yeah, I was going to say a bit
of
a bit of a quieter loan watch this time round to the one we had last time, where Louis Barry was firing in goals from all distances. But yeah, a bit of a quieter spell. An important goal that he scored a couple of weeks ago against Barnsley, last minute equaliser in front of Stockport's travelling fans. That's a big game. Stockport Barnsley. If Stockport are serious about sort of being there and thereabouts to pick up a point in that game is pretty huge. So yeah, and everything that you see coming out of Stockport is how important a player Louis Barry is to them. He's playing good minutes, starting every game. So yeah, no doubt we'll be counting up more goals next time we speak.
Yeah, he seems to have found a second home there, and every goal he scores adds a little bit more value to his price tag if he does move on, or or gets into Unai Emery's mind to think, what, maybe I could find a place for him. Kane Hayden as well, I think, deserves a shout out. He got a man of the match performance for Preston the other day against Burnley, so he seems to be doing well at the minute.
Yeah, I've not been following Kane so much. I've kind of mentally made the decision that he's graduated from the academy, but
yes.
But yeah, as a Villa fan, I'm still keeping an eye out for his performances. And so that game that was on TV, I was watching. You're right. He got the Player of the Match award in that derby with Burnley. There was a terrible offside decision in that game, which cost Preston the win, and it would have been talked about differently. But yeah, the tweets that I see from Preston fans are the stereotypical football fan thing of never let him leave and stuff like that. Don't fall in love with a lone player. So yeah, that can only be seen as a positive.
And how are the lads doing abroad? The ones at Real Union, how are they?
Yeah,
faring
it's been a good recent spell. James Wright, from what I understand, has picked up a little injury. which has meant that he's not been starting games. He's been sitting on the bench, but had a run of a couple of consecutive clean sheets in the games that he did start. Finn Monroe started to pick up a few more minutes, and we're also starting to see a good amount of minutes for Yamar Mascara, who we signed over the summer. He made his first substitute appearance and then also first start in the subsequent game to that. So, yeah, it's much harder to get information on defensive players because they're not scoring goals or assisting. But
yeah.
But the feedback that I'm getting is that the players look comfortable and look right at home.
Brilliant. And just quick, in terms of January, do you see any of the likes of, Ben Brogio or Caden Young or any of these other players maybe going out on loan in January to bolster their experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of players who are at a stage this season where it's not valuable for them to be playing under 21 football or sitting on the bench. Olivier Zeech is what is the first name that comes to mind after that performance last night. He will certainly have ideals of going out on loan and playing a lot more senior football following his season in Poland.
Mate, I'm sure the phone was going crazy.
Yeah.
after last night's performance from League One and League Two managers, I'm telling you now.
Yeah, unreal. And yeah, so him. I always look at the age when we talk about these sorts of players. So if we're thinking about the sort of 19, 20-year-olds who are playing in those positions, so we could be talking about Thierry Katsakunya. We could be talking about Kerr Smith once he's returned from injury. We could be talking about Ethan Amundsen Day, who's now 20. He's still 19. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how January plays out. It's impossible to say that we don't have a stockpile of players in certain positions. So it'll be interesting to see which ones they sanction moves for.
Yeah, I do see a few going out. Definitely, I do. Just to finish up, unless there's anything that you wanted to cover as well or anything we've missed, but Ben Kennedy asked a question on X. What's the best forum for discussing the youth teams? It feels like general Villa Twitter is hard because there's so many followers. You can't really have meaningful discussions. Do you know of any dedicated groups or message boards, etc., where you can discuss things around
unfortunately
the
not
players?
Yeah, unfortunately not. It is unfortunately it's just one of those sort of subcategories of football fandom where obviously the first team tends to get precedent. Nights like last night do wonders for the interest that these players get. Then I'm sure there'll be more fans keeping an eye out for some of those names that we saw feature last night. And yeah, I think there's a little bit of a community in my replies that I've seen. A couple of familiar faces that are always there, sort of discussing things. So yeah, I think if you follow the account, you'll probably see a couple of people who are always there, sort of sharing their opinions, also sharing news. That's how I pick up some news sometimes. I think I was informed by one of the followers that Villa were playing a pre-season tournament that was available on YouTube, and that's how this news gets out there.
Yeah. And you've got 13,500 now on X, so your following's growing all the time. So I think and people look at you as a real credible source, and we do this show every month as well to keep people up to date. So we're trying to do our bit as well. And like you say, with regards to the club, I think they are improving a little bit. I still would like to see interviews with the youth players. I'd like to see some features on YouTube channel and things like that. I'd like to see some stuff like that to help the players and to boost their profile. But I also get I think you mentioned on the last episode, sometimes they want to, maybe not want to showcase fully, how good some of these players are, so
yeah,
it's a delicate balancing act.
the way I see it is that, and it kind of relates back to the question of a forum to discuss academy players. Is I think I remember the reaction. I was walking through Wickham train station as the team news came out for that League Cup game, and a lot of the fans who I saw reacting to the team were saying things like, "Oh, we're playing the under-21s, we're going to lose," and it's little things like that which bug me. Like, there should be a bit more information out there about these players. The club should be able to be doing a better job than tweeting on the day that a match against Bolton is happening. There should be more information out there so that fans who are able to make that journey or who live locally to whichever team we're playing against in the EFL Trophy can go and see these players and learn some more about what their capabilities are and ultimately have a bit more knowledge so that when players do make the breakthrough, you've got a bit more understanding of what they're able to offer.
Ben also asked about Leon Routh, who was very impressed with him as well.
Yeah, superb.
Any information on him?
Yeah, brilliant. I mentioned earlier about Leon having joined from Luton in the summer. He was fantastic. I watched him in Bern. Sorry, no, not in Bern, against Bayern Munich in the Youth League, and looked right at home. Just an incredible amount of sort of poise. I was really impressed with his sort of understanding of when you don't need to clear the ball. It's easy if you're soaking up pressure in a match where you're kind of resigned to sort of suffering for 90 minutes to find Rosed at the first opportunity. And I was really impressed with those little actions that take 20, 30 seconds out of the game, taking a touch, taking pressure for a little bit, and then finding a channel with a pass. Left-footed, which always helps a centre-back. I think they're not as much of a commodity as a right-back, as a right-footer. So that will certainly help him as he makes his progression. And then, moving the ball, a couple of nice line-breaking passes. He was finding nice lanes into midfield in that Bolton game. So, really impressed with what I've been able to see from Leon. And I'm hoping that he forms part of the Youth Cup team, because, again, that strikes as another opportunity to get to watch these players.
Brilliant. So, just to close out, what have we got coming up in the next sort of month or so before we meet again? Obviously, a couple more UEFA Youth League games, EFL Cup. What anything else to be looking forward to?
So, as you mentioned there, Youth League, our next game will be on the same day as the Bologna home match on the 22nd of October. We'll play Bologna's under-19s at Bodymoor. That's a 1 o'clock kickoff. The next game will be an away trip to Club Bruges. That's on the 6th of November. That will be a 12:30 kickoff in the UK. The final EFL Trophy, Bristol Street Motors Trophy, or EFL Trophy, it's the same competition. The final group match there is against Barrow. That was rescheduled yesterday, so I just want to confirm the correct date. That's on the 12th of November, which is a Tuesday, 7 o'clock kickoff. That'll also be available on Sky Sports Plus, like with all the fixtures so far. And then, we're back into Premier League 2 and the Under-18 Premier League. Just actually to mention the Under-18 Premier League Cup. The Under-18s at the weekend had a really dramatic last-minute win. TJ Carroll scored a penalty in the 95th minute and then picked up a second booking in the aftermath after Middlesbrough themselves had 2 red cards. So a really dramatic one there. It looks like they'll likely need to win their last game against Fulham in order to progress. It's only the top team in the group that progresses in that competition, and then the one best placed second place team across all the groups. So an interesting one to follow there. And then, it's nice to have sort of something to hold on to with that top spot in Under-18 Premier League. You're maybe sort of able to approach games a little bit differently with that tag. And so, those big testing fixtures coming up against Arsenal and Brighton will be a really interesting barometer to see where this team is at, what they're capable of.
Awesome stuff, mate. Well, once again, brilliant knowledge, brilliant insight into the academy and all of the youth games and the loan players and everything with all of the underage players at Aston Villa, and it's so exciting to see so many of them developing. So thank you so much for your time, mate. Where can people find you if they don't know already?
So Academy AVFC on X. I've tried to start posting a little bit more on Instagram. We mentioned it that last time, but I've recently made a Threads account to do a little bit more coverage of the academy teams on a different platform. So also available on Instagram and Threads with the same tag, Academy AVFC.
Brilliant stuff. Guys, we will be back next month for our next episode of Lions Den Latest. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Get your comments in. Any questions, anything you want us to pick up, ask Charlie. Obviously, ask him on X or Threads or Instagram as well. We've got plenty more shows coming up for you for this week. And we've got Fans Forum as well next week. And we'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. I might even do a bit of a transfer talk roundup. Some of the rumours are starting already, heading into January. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.